C.S. Lewis once reflected, "We are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us. We are wondering how painful the best will turn out to be." Have you ever found yourself wrestling with a hurt so profound that it feels as though it's etched into the very fabric of your being? Perhaps it was a wound inflicted not just days or months ago, but years, maybe even decades have passed, and yet that pain still lingers. It's a weight that you carry silently, trying to convince yourself that it never really happened, or that it doesn't affect you anymore. But deep down, you know the truth. It's still there, buried within, resurfacing when you least expect it, disrupting your peace and stealing your joy. You might have tried to deny it, to suppress it, to push it so far down that it could never hurt you again. But in reality, it keeps bubbling up, sometimes in the most embarrassing or inconvenient ways. You know the person, the moment, the exact words or actions that caused the hurt, and what once seemed like a small wound is now hardened like concrete in your mind, immovable and unshakable. It's as though that pain has become a part of you, something you can't quite shake off, no matter how much you wish you could. And maybe, just maybe, you've reached the point where you feel like you'll never be able to overcome it, that this pain will define you forever. But let me share a truth with you. My friend, you are not defined by your hurt. Lewis's words remind us that while the process of healing may be painful, it's a necessary step toward the wholeness that God has for you. You have a choice in how you handle this pain. Will you allow it to continue harming you, infiltrating every aspect of your life, or will you decide to confront it, to face it head on, and learn from it? There's power in making the decision to grow through what you've gone through. It's not easy, healing never is, but it's possible, and it starts with a choice. Lewis often spoke of the necessity of suffering as part of the human experience, yet he also believed in the profound grace that follows. It's in that grace where you can find the strength to not only let go of the past, but to transform it into a source of wisdom and resilience. Imagine what could happen if you allowed yourself to let go of the bitterness, the anger, and the pain that has held you captive for so long. Imagine the freedom that awaits on the other side of forgiveness, not just of others but of yourself. I encourage you to stay with me on this journey. There's so much more to uncover, so much healing to be done. If this message is speaking to your heart, I invite you to like this video and share your experiences or thoughts in the comments below. Your story matters, and together we can walk through this path of healing. Let's explore, with C.S. Lewis as our guide, how to transform our pain into a deeper understanding of ourselves and our faith. The journey might be difficult, but remember, the best is yet to come, and it's worth every step. Can I hear a hallelujah from you? C.S. Lewis once poignantly observed, "Pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciences, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world." Have you ever found yourself trapped in the echoes of past hurts, where the pain lingers long after the original wound was inflicted? It's as if the injury happened yesterday, even if it's been years. Maybe you've noticed that this hurt has morphed into something far greater than you initially realized. You carry it with you, like a heavy suitcase of emotional baggage, never fully unpacked, never entirely put away. Do you find yourself questioning why this hurt remains? Why it seems to have taken root so deeply in your heart? Perhaps it's because, instead of addressing the wound when it was fresh, it was left to fester. Like C.S. Lewis's description of pain, this unresolved hurt has demanded your attention, shaping your life in ways that you might not even fully understand. God, in his infinite wisdom, does not want us to be crushed under the weight of our wounds. He doesn't desire for us to live in a state of perpetual devastation, where our joy is sapped, our witness diminished, and our spirit burdened by a load that we are never meant to carry. When someone hurts us, the pain often transforms into anger. It's a natural response, isn't it? To feel anger towards those who've wronged us, to want justice, to demand retribution in some form. But what happens when that anger is left unchecked, when it's not properly processed? It turns into bitterness, a bitterness that starts as a small seed, but soon grows into a deep-rooted tree, casting a dark shadow over our entire life. And what is the fruit of this bitter tree? A hardened heart. Lewis understood the dangers of allowing our hearts to harden. He once wrote, "To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything, and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. This is the danger of a heart that is allowed to harden, to be consumed by bitterness." Have you noticed how bitterness begins to alter who you are? It changes who you trust, making you suspicious even of those who mean you no harm. It shifts your perspective, leading you to build walls around your heart, walls that keep out the good along with the bad. Bitterness affects how you interact with others, how you speak, how you react, how you treat people who might remind you, even faintly, of the one who hurt you. Do you find yourself lashing out in unexpected ways? Your words sharper than you intended, your reactions colder than the situation warrants. These are signs of a heart that has been hardened by bitterness. But here's the hope in all of this. God, the great physician, offers a remedy. He does not leave us to our own devices, lost in the labyrinth of our own pain. He says, "I've got the prescription." This prescription involves facing our hurt head-on, bringing it before Him, and allowing Him to transform it. It means acknowledging the anger, not suppressing it, and dealing with it in a way that doesn't allow it to mutate into bitterness. It's about choosing to forgive, not because the other person deserves it, but because holding on to unforgiveness only deepens our own wounds. Lewis's insights remind us that this process of healing and softening our hearts is neither quick nor easy. It requires us to be vulnerable, to open ourselves up to God's grace, and to let go of the protective barriers we've erected around our hearts. It's about choosing love, even when it's the hardest choice to make. You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending, Lewis wisely noted. This is the invitation before you to change the ending of your story, to let God write a new chapter of healing and restoration. Can you imagine what your life could look like without the weight of this pain? How would your relationships change if you no longer carried the burden of bitterness? What would it feel like to trust again, to love freely, to speak words of kindness instead of lashing out in hurt? God's prescription is not just a path to healing, it's a path to freedom, a freedom that allows you to live fully, without the chains of past hurts holding you back. As we continue this journey together, I invite you to reflect on these questions. Consider the areas of your life where bitterness might have taken root and ask God to help you begin the process of healing. If this message resonates with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's walk this path of healing together, with the wisdom of C.S. Lewis and the guidance of our great physician leading the way. C.S. Lewis, in his profound wisdom, once said, "To be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you." But what does that mean for you, especially when the wounds run so deep that they seem beyond healing? Have you ever found yourself clutching onto past hurts, not because you want to, but because the pain feels too familiar, too intertwined with your identity? Perhaps it's a wound inflicted by someone you trusted, someone who was supposed to protect you, yet they left scars instead. Or maybe it's a series of small, repeated offenses that have built up over time, hardening your heart like a fortress, protecting you from further pain but also trapping you in bitterness and resentment. Have you ever considered that holding on to that pain might be doing more harm to you than to the person who hurt you? We often believe that by clinging to our anger, we somehow hold the power, the control over the situation, but in reality, that anger is controlling us, dictating our thoughts, our actions, and even our ability to find peace. Lewis understood the struggle of forgiveness, not as a mere act of letting go, but as a profound, often painful process that requires us to confront our deepest fears and wounds. He reminds us that forgiveness is not about excusing the wrongs done to us, it's about freeing ourselves from the chains of bitterness that bind us. The great physician, Christ himself, offers us a prescription, one that's difficult to swallow but promises healing in its wake. That prescription is forgiveness, a word that is easy to speak, yet so hard to live out, especially when the wounds are still fresh. What would your life look like if you allowed yourself to go through this process of forgiveness? Not just a superficial, "I forgive you," but a deep, heart-level release of the pain that has held you captive. What if you could let go of the anger that flares up every time you remember the hurt? What if you could release the bitterness that seeps into your relationships, tainting them with suspicion and mistrust? God doesn't ask us to forgive because it's easy. He asks us to forgive because it's the only way to true freedom. Just as C.S. Lewis points out, forgiving the inexcusable is not about justifying the wrong done to us, but about recognizing that we ourselves have been forgiven of the inexcusable by God. This perspective shifts the burden from our shoulders, placing it into the hands of the one who can truly carry it. Forgiveness is not a one-time act, it's a journey, often a painful one, but it's a journey that leads to healing. The great physician says, "I've got the prescription, and it's forgiveness." He doesn't promise that it will be painless, far from it. The process may bring up old wounds, expose raw emotions, and challenge us to confront things we'd rather keep buried. But he also promises that if we walk through it, we will find freedom from the anger that poisons our soul, freedom from the bitterness that hardens our heart, and freedom to live a life filled with peace and joy. Is holding on to that pain worth the cost? What could you gain if you chose to forgive, to release that burden, and allow God to heal those broken places within you? It's not about forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about acknowledging the pain and then choosing not to let it define you. The journey of forgiveness is one that requires courage, strength, and an unwavering trust in God's plan for your life. But as Lewis so eloquently reminds us, it's a journey that leads to life, to freedom, and to a deeper understanding of God's grace. Will you take that step today? Will you trust the great physician with your heart, knowing that he has the perfect prescription for your healing? C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Everyone says forgiveness is a lovely idea. Until they have something to forgive, have you ever struggled with the weight of forgiving someone who caused you deep pain? Perhaps you've asked yourself, how can I forgive when the wound is so deep? When the betrayal is so personal, it's natural to feel that forgiveness might somehow excuse the actions of those who hurt us, that by forgiving, we are saying, it was okay that you hurt me. It was okay that you left. It was okay that you lied." But forgiveness is not about justifying the wrong that was done to you. It's not about erasing the reality of the pain, nor is it about letting someone off the hook for the harm they've caused. Lewis's insight into human nature reminds us that forgiveness is often easier to admire in theory than to practice in reality. When faced with the real, raw wounds inflicted by others, we may feel that forgiving is akin to surrendering our right to justice. But here's the truth: God never asks us to overlook the wrongs committed against us. Instead, he calls us to trust him with the burden of justice. "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," says the Lord. This profound statement is a reminder that forgiveness is not an act of letting the guilty go free. It is an act of freeing ourselves from the prison of bitterness. But let's dig deeper. What does it really mean to forgive? Does it mean we must restore relationships with those who have hurt us? Does it mean we must invite them back into our lives? Forgiveness does not always lead to reconciliation, nor does it require us to return to the same relationship dynamics. Sometimes, the most loving and wise choice is to keep a healthy distance, to protect ourselves from further harm. Forgiving someone doesn't mean that we ignore the boundaries necessary for our well-being. Instead, it means releasing the need to seek revenge or to hold on to the desire to make them pay. Lewis understood the complexities of the human heart. He knew that our struggles with forgiveness often stem from a fear that we're somehow condoning the wrongs done to us. But forgiveness is not about approving or excusing, it's about entrusting the outcome to God. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, the Bible instructs. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. This is not a call to passivity, but a call to active trust in God's justice and timing. It's an invitation to live in peace as much as it depends on us. to let go of the burden of vengeance, and to allow God's righteous judgment to prevail. So, what is holding you back from forgiving? Is it the fear that by forgiving, you are somehow admitting defeat? Or is it the worry that the person who wronged you will never face the consequences of their actions? Take comfort in knowing that God sees every injustice, every tear, every moment of pain. He promises that no one is exempt from His judgment. Justice is my job, God assures us, and His justice is perfect, far more perfect than anything we could ever administer. In the end, forgiveness is a choice, a decision to release ourselves from the chains of anger and resentment. It's not easy, Lewis never pretended it was, but it's a choice that leads to freedom. It's a choice that allows us to move forward without being weighed down by the past. As you ponder this, I invite you to reflect on your own journey. Are there wounds you need to release to God? Are there people you need to forgive, not for their sake, but for yours? Lewis believed that forgiveness was a key to unlocking the fullness of life, not because it absolves the wrongdoer, but because it liberates the wounded. So, ask yourself, are you ready to take that step toward freedom? If this message resonates with you, take a moment to share your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Let's walk this path of forgiveness together, trusting that God's justice will prevail and that His grace will sustain us in every step we take. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "To be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you." This profound truth challenges us to examine the depths of our own hearts, where the real battle of forgiveness is often fought. Have you ever found yourself saying, "I've forgiven them," only to realize later that the pain still lingers, shaping your thoughts and actions toward that person? Perhaps you've caught yourself questioning, can I really trust them again? Will they just hurt me like they did before? These doubts reveal that while we may have spoken words of forgiveness, true release from the burden of that hurt has yet to be achieved. The journey of forgiveness is not a simple one. It demands that we confront our own insecurities and fears head-on. We might think we've forgiven, yet in our hearts, we still hold on to the pain, the bitterness, the need to make the other person pay for what they've done. We replay the past, saying to ourselves, "I'll forgive, but I won't forget," as if holding on to the memory of the wrong can somehow protect us from future hurt. But as Lewis suggests, forgiveness isn't about excusing or forgetting, it's about making a deliberate choice to lay down the debt that someone owes us completely. Ask yourself, what does it mean to truly forgive? Can you let go of the right to punish, to seek justice on your own terms? Lewis argued that the act of forgiveness is an essential part of our spiritual journey, one that reflects the grace we've received from God. He knew, as we must come to know, that forgiveness is not a passive act, but an active and often painful surrender of our desire for retribution. It's not about ignoring the wrong that was done or pretending it didn't hurt, rather. It's about deciding not to hold it over the other person's head anymore. Consider the weight you carry when you refuse to forgive. Does holding on to that anger make you feel more secure, or does it, in fact, eat away at your peace? Lewis once observed that resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. This vivid metaphor underscores the self-destructive nature of unforgiveness. By clinging to our right to punish, we only end up punishing ourselves, allowing the hurt to continue its destructive work in our lives. Is that a price you're willing to pay? True forgiveness, as Lewis understood it, requires us to trust in God's justice rather than our own. It's about relinquishing control and saying, "I trust that God will deal with this person as He sees fit." This surrender is no small task. It involves a deep faith in God's goodness and sovereignty. But in doing so, we find freedom from the chains of bitterness that bind us to the past, freedom to move forward into the fullness of life that God has for us. You see, forgiveness is a powerful tool, not just for mending relationships, but for healing our own souls. It's a process that allows us to see the world and the people in it through the lens of grace rather than judgment. When we truly forgive, we're not simply letting someone off the hook, we're choosing to release ourselves from the prison of unforgiveness. This is what Lewis called a terrible duty, terrible because it's so hard, but a duty nonetheless because it's what God calls us to do. So, I challenge you today, will you let go of the hurt that has held you captive? Will you lay aside your right to punish and trust God with the outcome? This is not about justifying the wrong that was done to you, nor is it about forgetting the pain. It's about making a conscious decision to no longer let that pain dictate your life. As Lewis wisely noted, forgiveness is a beautiful word, until you have something to forgive, but it's in those moments when forgiveness seems impossible that its true power is revealed. Let us move forward, not with hearts weighed down by past hurts, but with the lightness that comes from letting go. Let us trust that God, in His infinite wisdom, will bring about the justice we seek in His own way and time. And in the meantime, let us focus on what forgiveness can do for us, how it can free us, heal us, and draw us closer to the heart of God. This journey is not easy, but it is worth every step. So take that step today and see how forgiveness can transform your life. If this message speaks to you, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation and support one another as we walk this difficult but rewarding path of forgiveness. Like this video, and stay tuned for more insights on how we can live out the teachings of C.S. Lewis and other great Christian thinkers in our daily lives. C.S. Lewis once poignantly observed, "To be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable, because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you." This profound truth calls us to a place of deep reflection. Have you ever found yourself wrestling with the notion of forgiveness, particularly when the person who has wronged you shows no signs of remorse or change? Perhaps you've extended the olive branch, offered forgiveness from the depths of your heart, and yet the one who caused you pain remains unrepentant. Their malice is strong today as it was when the hurt first occurred. This can leave you questioning, does your act of forgiveness hold any real power if the other person continues to walk in darkness, unchanged and unhealed? It's in moments like these that the real challenge of forgiveness emerges. You may wonder if your forgiveness has been in vain, if the burden you've carried and then released is still hanging over you because the other person refuses to acknowledge or reciprocate your gesture. But here's the truth that Lewis and so many spiritual teachers impart: forgiveness is not about the other person's response, it's about your freedom, your healing, and your growth. You are not responsible for the way someone else reacts to your forgiveness, nor are you tasked with ensuring their redemption. God, in His infinite wisdom, calls us to forgive, because it is through forgiveness that we find release from the chains of bitterness and anger that can bind our hearts. The person who has hurt you may never change. Their heart may remain hardened, their spirit unyielding. They may continue to harbor the same malice and resentment that led to the original wound. But here's the crucial point: you are not their keeper. You are not responsible for their journey of healing or the state of their soul. That responsibility lies between them and God. However, you are responsible for your own heart, your own soul. You are responsible for how you respond to the pain inflicted upon you. Lewis reminds us that forgiveness is not about excusing the inexcusable, nor is it about pretending that all is well between you and the one who hurt you. Forgiveness is about laying down the heavy burden of resentment and choosing to walk in the freedom that God offers. Have you ever considered that holding on to the expectation that the other person will change might be keeping you in a place of perpetual hurt? The reality is, they might never change. They might never seek your forgiveness, acknowledge their wrong, or turn from their harmful ways. And yet, in the midst of this, you have the power to change, to grow, to heal, and to move forward. It's not an easy path, and it certainly doesn't mean that you minimize the pain or pretend it never happened. But it does mean that you no longer allow their actions or lack of repentance to dictate your peace, your joy, or your future. You and I are called to rise above, to transcend the hurt, and to live in the freedom that forgiveness brings. It's not our job to ensure that the other person finds their way to healing. That's God's work. What we are called to do is to keep our own hearts pure, to let go of the bitterness, and to trust that God will handle the rest. Each of us will give an account to God for our actions, and that includes how we respond to those who have wronged us. So I ask you, As you reflect on those who have hurt you, are you still waiting for them to change before you can move on? Are you allowing their lack of repentance to keep you chained to the past? Or are you ready to take responsibility for your own healing, to embrace the freedom that comes with true forgiveness, and to leave the rest in God's hands? Remember, you are not responsible for another person's actions or their spiritual journey. You are responsible for your own. And in that responsibility lies the key to your peace and freedom. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "To be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable, because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you." This powerful reminder draws us into a deeper contemplation. Have you ever found yourself clinging to the pain caused by another, convinced that holding on to that grudge somehow justifies the hurt? Do you ever feel that by staying angry, you're somehow punishing the person who wronged you? Yet, in truth, has this anger ever brought you peace, or has it only deepened your suffering? Lewis understood the human tendency to hold on to pain, to nurse wounds and allow them to fester into bitterness. He knew that in doing so, we don't harm the one who hurt us, rather, we imprison ourselves in a cell of our own making. The resentment that we harbor is like a chain that binds us, preventing us from moving forward, from experiencing the fullness of life that God intends for us. We often convince ourselves that by staying angry, we're maintaining control over a situation that caused us pain. But ask yourself, has holding on to that grudge ever brought you the healing you seek? Or has it only deepened your wounds? Imagine your life if you could release that burden. Imagine the freedom that could come from truly letting go. The Bible tells us that forgiveness is not just for the benefit of the one who wronged us, but for our own hearts, our own peace. When we forgive, we are not condoning the wrong done to us. We are not saying it was okay. Rather, we are choosing to release ourselves from the shackles of bitterness and resentment. We are choosing to let God be the judge, to trust in His justice, and to free ourselves from the toxic weight that is holding us back. Lewis believed that forgiveness is essential to the Christian walk, but he also understood that it is not easy. It requires us to confront our own pain, to acknowledge the depth of the hurt, and to make a conscious decision to let it go. This is not a one-time event, but a process, a journey of healing that begins the moment we choose to forgive. And in that moment, as we release the grudge, the healing process begins. What was once a source of deep pain and suffering starts to lose its power over us. Slowly, God begins to mend the broken pieces of our hearts, to restore our joy, and to set us free. But before you can experience that freedom, you must ask yourself, is it worth it to continue carrying this burden? Is the bitterness that you've held onto for so long worth the toll it's taking on your soul? As Lewis wisely pointed out, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The reality is that the only person you're hurting is yourself. The anger, the resentment, it's only deepening the wound, making it harder for you to heal. What can you do with this hurt that feels too heavy to bear? How do you begin the process of letting go when every part of you wants to hold on? The answer lies in surrendering it to God. He alone can carry the weight of your pain. He alone can bring justice and healing. Trust that His grace is sufficient, that His strength is made perfect in your weakness. Give your hurt to Him and watch as He transforms it into something beautiful, something that no longer defines you, but rather something that has refined you. As you ponder these questions and consider the possibility of forgiveness, know that you are not alone on this journey. Lewis, like so many others, grappled with these very struggles, yet he found peace in the surrender. I invite you to take the first step toward healing. It won't be easy, and it may take time, but the freedom on the other side is worth it. Release the grudge, forgive as you have been forgiven, and let God begin the healing process in your life. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Relying on God has to begin all over again every day, as if nothing had yet been done." Have you ever found yourself so weighed down by the pain inflicted by others that it feels as though you're carrying an unbearable load? You might think you can manage it, suppress it, or even solve it on your own, but every time you try, it seems to slip through your fingers, growing heavier with each passing day. This burden, this hurt, lingers not just in your mind but in your soul, gnawing at your peace and disrupting your ability to live freely and fully. And have you ever asked yourself why it's so difficult to let go? Why does this pain feel so personal, so deeply rooted that it becomes a part of who you are? Perhaps it's because we often underestimate the power of surrender. We think that by holding on to our pain, we maintain control, but in reality, it's the pain that controls us. Have you noticed how it seeps into your thoughts, influences your decisions, and even colors your interactions with others? It's like a shadow that follows you everywhere, casting darkness over even the brightest moments. Lewis understood this struggle intimately. He knew that our human instinct is to hold on, to try to fix things ourselves, to seek justice on our own terms. But he also knew that there's a profound freedom in surrendering not to defeat, but to God's greater wisdom and love. Have you ever considered what might happen if you truly handed over your pain to God? Not just in words, but in your heart, in your deepest places of hurt and sorrow. What if you could say, with full conviction, "Lord, this burden is too heavy for me. I cannot carry it any longer. I don't know the right path, and I'm tired of pretending that I do. So I'm giving it to you completely, without holding anything back." There is a unique kind of strength in admitting our weaknesses, in recognizing that we don't have all the answers. Lewis once said, "Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less." In this context, humility means acknowledging that only God can heal the wounds that we've tried and failed to heal on our own. It's not about giving up. It's about giving over to God what we were never meant to carry in the first place. Imagine, for a moment, the relief of letting go. Picture yourself placing that heavy burden at the feet of God, trusting that He will handle it with the care, justice, and mercy that you and I cannot muster. How might your life change if you stopped seeking revenge, stopped trying to make everything right on your own terms, and instead left it all in God's capable hands? Lewis reminds us that the journey of faith is not a one-time event but a daily act of surrender. Each day offers a new opportunity to say, "Lord, I trust you with this. I trust you with me." As you contemplate this, ask yourself what is stopping you from letting go. Is it fear that God won't handle it the way you would? Is it pride, the belief that you should be able to handle it on your own? Or is it simply the habit of holding on because letting go feels too vulnerable, too uncertain? Whatever it is, remember this: God's hands are far more capable than ours. He sees the entire picture, the beginning and the end, and His ways are higher than our ways. So, I challenge you today, as Lewis might, to take that step of faith. Say to God, "I release this hurt to you. I am no longer its prisoner, and I will no longer let it define me. I trust you to handle it, to bring about justice, healing, and peace in your perfect timing and in your perfect way." This is not a one-time act, but a daily practice, a continuous offering of our pain to the one who can truly transform it. Let this be your prayer, your daily surrender. And as you do, watch how God begins to work in ways you never imagined, lifting the burden, healing the wounds, and restoring the joy that was stolen from you. Remember, as Lewis so beautifully put it, there are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind. Will you trust God with your burden today? Will you give it to Him, fully and without reservation, and step into the freedom that only He can provide? There's evidence in Scripture and evidence from looking at other people's lives that no matter what kind of past you have, you still have a great future out in front of you. But you must let go of the past, and for some people, that means forgiving someone else. For some people, it may mean forgiving yourself or actually receiving the forgiveness of God. So many people are mad at themselves, and they won't forgive themselves for mistakes they've made and things they've done. And honestly and truly, until you let go of the past, you really cannot take hold of the future that God has for you. Every great man and woman has to rise above the pain of their past to reach their God-given destiny. There are a couple of sayings that I like. One is, "Until you let the past die, it will not let your future live." You have to forgive even yourself. You have to believe that the blood of Jesus is greater than your sin, and it is for where sin does abound, grace does much more abound. We have to forgive people and forgive ourselves, and stop letting the past have control over our lives. Another saying that I like is, forgiveness doesn't make them right, it just makes us free. I'm not saying they're right. And some people, even though I forgive them, I'm not going to let them in my life to get another shot at me. That would not be wise. But I'm not going to keep rehearsing and nursing the hurts and offenses of my past, letting the devil keep coming and condemning me for the things I've done wrong. Those things don't have any power over me anymore. I'm going to let them go. I heard this saying one time, never follow a general without scars, and thank God our general has scars. Don't ever follow some poser that pretends as though they don't have any problems and they're above everything. Don't ever do that. Whatever has wounded you, whatever you hide, whatever happens, see. When Jesus shows Thomas his scars, I'm glad he kept his scars. I'm glad he kept that part. I'm glad he didn't stay dead. But I'm also glad that he came out scarred, because that gives me hope. Jesus was healed of his deadly wounds, but he was not healed of his scars. The scar became a testimony of God's ability to heal. When Jesus rose from the dead, he was healed of his deadly wounds, but God did not take the scars away. We want complete restoration where nobody knows we ever had an issue. We want such restoration that nobody knows that our perfect lives were not perfect. We want everybody to think that we have the picture-perfect family, the picture-perfect marriage, the picture-perfect life, and that nothing, because of my great faith, ever came to my home. But scars are a testimony of God's ability to heal deadly wounds. Scars mean, this is what I overcame. This is how bad it was, and this is how good God has healed me, and I'm not ashamed of my scars. When Jesus walked into the upper room after he rose from the dead, he said, "Some people need to see my scars, like Thomas, or they'll never believe I'm saying to you, quit covering up your scars. They remind you of what you've been healed of. Wear them as a badge of honor." The scar proves how bad it was at one point. Hallelujah. I'd be a fool to walk around and act like I've never had marriage problems, I've never had family problems, I've never wanted to quit. But what you do is you look at the devil and you say, "You see these scars? They're proof that you've tried your best with mortal wounds to destroy me, to wipe me out, to destroy my family. But no weapon formed against us could prosper, because I serve a God who heals deadly wounds. Quit acting like you're perfect. Will God be able to use us if we have an unpleasant past? Well, to be honest, I think it's easier for him to use people who have actually experienced some problems in their life than those who maybe had it absolutely perfect, simply for the reason that you can have more compassion if you've gone through something yourself. Now, that doesn't mean that God can't use people who haven't been through all that, because he certainly can. But I know all the bad stuff that happened to me, God has used it now. So what does the Bible say? He works all things together for our good. It doesn't have to be good for God to turn it into something good. And that's really one of the greatest promises in the Word, and one that we really need to think about more. No matter what it is, if it's my mistake, if it's something somebody did to me, God can take it if we. What does it say? If we love him and want his will. That's it. Just love him and want his will, and give it to him, and he'll be able to take it and make something good of it.